Trying vocal chains that you find online is helpful for sure, but let's be honest, how often will they work for multiple vocalists? That's why we created a vocal chain that you could use under any circumstance, one that's going to sound good for any session with minimal changes needed. So check the description for a free download of the template. Let's take a listen to the same vocal chain used on multiple vocals spanning various genres. But real quick, we have a new membership. New members get 10 mastering credits, 2 additional masters each month, and a lot more that we're going to cover at the end of the video.
I see a lot of you pose with a Bible just for the aesthetic. Don't got no faith, but you act like disciples that see through the fake when you talking prophetic.
Tell me what you wanna do, I'll show you what I give, yeah. Lately I've been needing you, we could just pretend, yeah. Tell me where you're running to now. I should've never opened my mouth. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Anything to make me feel the way I did with her.
First, let's prepare the vocal. So the first insert that we're going to use is subtractive EQ, but before we do that, here's how I'd like you to prepare the vocal for this particular chain. So the third insert in this chain is a compressor. Now notice that we achieve anywhere between 3 and 6 dB of compression when using a 4:1 ratio with a softer knee and a negative 10.5 threshold. So copy the settings of the first 3 inserts in this chain, then click on the track and adjust its clip gain until it sounds balanced with the instrumental and you're achieving about 3 to 6 dB of compression. So the first insert we'll use is a simple EQ with a 12 dB per octave high-pass filter cut up to about 100 Hz. Now this is going to keep the vocals fundamental while cutting out any unrelated low-frequency noise, rumble, etc. Then we'll attenuate 250 Hz by 1 dB to demask the clarifying high-frequency range. This is going to help bring the vocal forward without creating a noticeable change in the lows. Lastly, we'll accentuate around 2.4 kHz by 1.5 dB to add some more clarity. Now the combination of these last 2 filters cleans and clarifies the vocal without the need to make aggressive changes. Because we're making subtle changes that still create the desired effect, these settings work with just about any vocal. So let's take a listen to this EQ being enabled across our 3 tracks.
I see a lot of you pose with a Bible just for the aesthetic. Don't got no faith, but you act like disciples that see through the fake when you talking prophetic.
Tell me what you wanna do, I'll show you what I give, yeah. Lately I've been needing you, we could just pretend, yeah. Tell me where you're running to now. I should've never opened my mouth. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Anything to make me feel the way I did with her.
For insert 2, let's use Soothe 2. So Soothe 2 is one of the few paid-for plugins that I actually recommend. It's going to measure the incoming signal and dynamically attenuate resonances or frequencies that are too aggressive. The emphasis bands include a high-pass filter around 175 Hz, a bell at 500 Hz, a narrow bell at 6.6 kHz, and a broad bell at 8.5 kHz. I'm not going to say every value, but please feel free to simply copy this over or download the chain in the description. Now a depth of 1.6 with a slightly higher sharpness, a mix of 65%, while using some ultra settings will make this processor suitable for any vocal. It'll balance the lows, moderately adjust the mids, and provide de-essing within a broad range of frequencies. So let's take a listen to it, being introduced to each vocal track within the context of the mix, and note how different frequencies are being attenuated each time.
I see a lot of you pose with a Bible just for the aesthetic. Don't got no faith, but you act like disciples that see through the fake when you talking prophetic.
Tell me what you wanna do, I'll show you what I give, yeah. Lately I've been needing you, we could just pretend, yeah. Tell me where you're running to now. I should've never opened my mouth. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Anything to make me feel the way I did with her.
For insert 3, let's introduce compression. So at this point, the frequency response is pretty balanced, and we should begin compressing. I brought this up in chapter 1, but I'm using a 4:1 ratio with a softer knee and with the threshold set to negative 10.5 dB. Additionally, use a quick attack, a 50 millisecond release, and importantly, 2 milliseconds a look ahead. These will capture the vocal quickly and smoothly without unwanted distortion. Lastly, note that automatic makeup gain is enabled. This ensures that quieter details of the vocal are brought to the forefront. And if you don't have this compressor, you could try Tone Booster's Compressor 4. It's not free, but it's very affordable, and it offers nearly identical settings. Let's take a listen to it, enabled on our tracks, and note that even with vocals that vary in their dynamic ranges, these settings control them well and start to create a more polished sound.
I see a lot of you pose with a Bible just for the aesthetic. Don't got no faith, but you act like disciples that see through the fake when you talking prophetic.
Tell me what you wanna do, I'll show you what I give, yeah. Lately I've been needing you, we could just pretend, yeah. Tell me where you're running to now. I should've never opened my mouth. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Anything to make me feel the way I did with her.
Insert number 4 is going to be frequency-specific saturation. So saturation will make the vocal sound full, but how can we do this without making it muddy or shrill? Well, first, we'll separate the spectrum into 2 bands, below and above 3.2 kilohertz. Below 3.2 kilohertz, we'll use a clean tube setting. This is going to create even and odd ordered harmonics, but without an aggressive second order harmonic. This keeps the vocal warm and full without becoming overbearingly warm. Now the drive is set to 14% with an envelope follower with the default 1 millisecond attack and 250 millisecond release attached to the drive dial. We're going to use a positive value of 0.1. Now this keeps the distortion dynamic without over distorting the vocal. Now above 3.2 kilohertz, we're going to use a clean tape setting with no drive and an increased output of 0.5 dB. This will add harmonics to the high frequencies, but it will keep them from becoming shrill. Now, if you don't have this saturator, you could try GSAT Plus, a free alternative, and mix odd and even ordered harmonics under the crisp algorithm until you find something similar. Let's take a listen to it on our 3 vocals and notice how it works well in each situation.
I see a lot of you pose with a Bible just for the aesthetic. Don't got no faith, but you act like disciples that see through the fake when you talking prophetic.
Tell me what you wanna do, I'll show you what I give, yeah. Lately I've been needing you, we could just pretend, yeah. Tell me where you're running to now. I should've never opened my mouth. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Anything to make me feel the way I did with her.
Insert 5 is optional side-chained Golfos EQ. So this step isn't super important, but it helps shape the vocal around the mix. With the Golfos EQ, I'll sidechain the instrumental mix bus and enable the sidechain option in the lower left corner. Then I'll isolate the processing between 150 Hz and 4 kHz while setting recover to 15% and tame to 25%. These settings dynamically shape the mid-frequencies of the vocal around the instrumental, ensuring that they work well together. To avoid adding aggressive lows or contributing to sibilance, the brighten function should be avoided, and again, the processing is isolated to the low to high mids. Let's take a listen and notice how the EQ changes from vocal to vocal.
I see a lot of you pose with a Bible just for the aesthetic. Don't got no faith, but you act like disciples that see through the fake when you talking prophetic.
Tell me what you wanna do, I'll show you what I give, yeah. Lately I've been needing you, we could just pretend, yeah. Tell me where you're running to now. I should've never opened my mouth. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Anything to make me feel the way I did with her.
Next up, let's insert some short studio reverb. So reverb is pretty subjective to the genre, but short reverb is going to help thicken a vocal while keeping it sounding natural. Now personally, I love this Seventh Heaven plugin, and I'm going to use the Studio D preset under the Rooms 1 tab and dial the mix in to about -17 dB. Now, although you could always pick a different reverb, I spent a good amount of time combing through various reverbs until I found an option that works incredibly well with multiple vocalists and different genres. Now, these demos are kind of slowing us down a bit, so let's move on to the next processor, and then we'll check back in with how everything sounds. For insert 7, I'm going to use subtle stereo delay. So for this next insert, you could just use your stock stereo delay plugin. First, I'm going to turn off any tempo sync functions, then set the left channel to 164 milliseconds and the right channel somewhere between 160 and 163 milliseconds to add some variation. Then I'm going to isolate the reflections between 300 and 3.5 kilohertz. If it's available, I'll introduce some mild feedback, some crosstalk, and introduce the effect very subtly between 2 to 4%. Now, some of you are probably rolling your eyes thinking this isn't going to do anything, but with this after our room reverb, it'll add subtle slapback that further fills and blends in with the vocal. So let's listen to the reverb enabled, then I'll enable the delay so that you can hear how they work in tandem.
I see a lot of you pose with a Bible just for the aesthetic. Don't got no faith, but you act like disciples that see through the fake when you talking prophetic.
Tell me what you wanna do, I'll show you what I give, yeah. Lately I've been needing you, we could just pretend, yeah. Tell me where you're running to now. I should've never opened my mouth. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Anything to make me feel the way I did with her.
For Insert 8, let's use Fresh Air EQ and Exciting. So this next step is super simple. You just got to add the free plugin Fresh Air by Slate Digital and set both functions to 4. This is going to boost the high mids and the air frequencies, creating a clear, hi-fi sound. Now, quick side note, before we get into our last step, you might be wondering how I could use the same settings for various processors on different vocals and still have it work. Well, the main reason it's working is because Soothe 2 balances the vocal first, and then all of the subsequent processing augments things that people almost always want in their vocals. Additionally, setting the gain to a level so that the signal interacts with the processors in the intended way is really important. Now, I mentioned the membership already briefly, but I have a lot more of these types of chains, one that work in a lot of circumstances, and they can be copied while still having incredibly consistent results. Now, enough about that. Let's move on to the last step, which is setting up a duct reverb send. Now, in the downloadable template, this is going to be a separate file since it has to go in a different folder. So I'll set up a send or a bus, and I'm going to set it to Unity on the auxiliary track. I'm going to use this Seventh Heaven plugin again, but this time I'll use the preset Sun Plate A under the Plates 1 tab. I'll change the decay time to 1.8 seconds to help keep it from sounding too apparent. Additionally, I'll introduce a low-pass filter at 10 kHz. Again, you could use a different reverb plugin, but I did search for a bit to find a somewhat universal option for stylistic reverb, and this preset, with all these altered settings, works really well, at least in my opinion. Now, after the reverb, I'll insert a compressor that sidechains the dry signal. Now, this way the attenuation occurs to the reverb during its transient, ducking the reverb and letting the vocal through. A 3-to-1 ratio, moderate knee, negative 19 dB threshold with some look ahead and a quick attack and 100 millisecond release should achieve between 3 to 5 dB of attenuation. Just make sure the auto makeup gain function is turned off this time. Lastly, blend in the reverb. Now you could use more or less if you want, but setting the aux track to negative 21.5 dB seemed to work great for all 3 tracks. Let's take a listen to the previous processor, Fresh Air, being introduced, followed by the aux track being enabled.
I see a lot of you pose with a Bible just for the aesthetic. Don't got no faith, but you act like disciples that see through the fake when you talking prophetic.
Tell me what you wanna do, I'll show you what I give, yeah. Lately I've been needing you, we could just pretend, yeah. Tell me where you're running to now. I should've never opened my mouth. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Anything to make me feel the way I did with her.
As audio engineers, we want to fulfill our creative potential. We want to know how to achieve a sound quickly and efficiently without having to second-guess ourselves or endlessly revise a production, mix, or master. Having mastered thousands of tracks over the past 20-plus years, we know how important it is to put your best foot forward as an engineer or an artist, but what's even more important is having the resources and the knowledge to create your best work. Now that's why we created the Sage Audio Membership, a collective space where you could have your tracks mastered, engage with a thriving community, and learn the skills you need to take your project from start to finish and be happy with the final result. Now, a membership like this is nothing without a strong community. That's why we're giving 10 free masters to every new member. Our goal is to have as many engineers as possible, sharing their ideas, providing feedback on each other's mixes and masters, and helping to build a place where anyone can learn. To give our members a great foundation for successful projects, we created a 4-hour-long mastering course, starting with fundamentals and ending with mastering chains for specific genres. So far, we've seen and heard great results, with both new engineers and seasoned ones noticing a huge improvement in their mastering. Now, a mixing course will be released next, with more in-depth courses to follow. Now, in the past, you probably shared your mixes and your masters with some friends and fellow musicians, while piecing together often conflicting info from across the internet to try and improve your productions. But with this membership, you have the option to receive feedback on your mixes and your masters from multiple engineers, including Sage audio engineers. At the same time, you could learn from a coherent, logical, and to-the-point source, giving you the tools that you need to take your productions to a new level. Meanwhile, you could have us master your tracks with your 10 included free masters, as well as 2 additional mastering credits that you'll receive each month. Furthermore, you'll have access to mixed tracks for mastering practice, raw sessions for mixing practice, start-to-finish mixing and mastering chain templates, and plugin presets designed by us. Right now, we're offering a 70% discount for the full membership, bringing the monthly total down to $15. This price is locked in. It won't go up for as long as you're a member. So sign up today to receive your discount and 10 free masters. We're excited to see what you create, and we can't wait to help along the way.